Starting. Okay. Good morning, everybody. On Parashat Kitisa. Kitisa, after talking about building the Mishkan and all the details and everything, we got to the point that we're doing it. It's like it's written in Pasuk. 1 minute. Lamed Aleph Dalet. It's written 1 minute. לחשוב מחשבות לעשות בזהב ובכסף והנחושת. To think thoughts to do with gold, silver, and copper. And if you see, it's a very interesting point. לחשוב מחשבות, to think thoughts, לעשות, to do. It's not enough. You have to do. You have to act. You know, there are a lot of people with beautiful ideas, unbelievable ideas, but they never do anything about it. In business also. It's got to, you know, by the way, the smiling, the famous smiling that we've got, the guy that did it the first time didn't get even a penny on it because he didn't have a patent on it. And others took it and did a lot of money out of this stupid thing, smiling, that is all over the world today, a pig. Why? He had an idea and he thought about it, but he didn't do anything about it. And that's an important point. In life, it's not enough to think, it's what you do. And if we're already talking about doing, you also have to do with the thought behind it. In other words, to think thoughts to do goes both ways. You don't do anything without thinking. Thinking if it's good to do or not. Also, it's not enough to think. You have to do. But I'm going to leave this for a minute because I want to start from the beginning of the Parsha, which is a very interesting phrase. Am Israel is being counted. And by the way, counting Am Israel is not an easy thing to do. It's a very problematic thing. Because if you count Am Israel just 1, 2, 3, 4, you can bring Chas v'Sholom a plague on Am Israel. That's why here we see also Am Israel being counted with bringing half a shekel, and this is the way they are being counted. But the thing is, we're talking about counting, and look what the Parsha is telling us. The Parsha is telling us, וידבר השם אל משה לאמור, כי תישא את ראש בני ישראל לאמור. What does it mean? כי תישא את ראש בני ישראל לפיקודיהם. Raise the head of the children of Israel. What's the meaning of counting? Why don't you just say, כי תספור את בני ישראל. You will count the children of Israel. כי תפקוד, which is the same thing in a different word, the children of Israel. Why do you need to say, what is כי תישא? כי תישא is to raise up something. And nevertheless, why are you talking about the head? Who cares about the head? You're counting the people. You're not counting heads. What is this, cattle? Counting heads? But here is a very, very important lesson to each one of us. We are talking here because in the Torah, there's not always the right order. Sometimes there's something before the other things. And for example, in our Parsha, we see the sin of the golden calf was before what we're talking here about. In other words, we see, when we go on the Parsha, we see the sin of the golden calf. And a lot of opinions say that this was done before the counting of Bnei Israel. There are also other ideas, but we're not going to go into it. We have to understand why the Parsha starts with this. After, when you do something wrong, and you understand how wrong you are, what is your feeling? How do you feel? You feel bad. And what happens to your head? You go with your head in the down. And when you're in this situation, depressed and sad, normally, either whatever you do is no good. You do it like what do you say? Just the sake of doing it, or sometimes you don't even do anything. Sometimes people can get to the depression that they sit in a corner and do nothing. So the first thing for a human being to understand is that it doesn't matter what happened and what you did. You have to raise up your head and go on with life. And this is exactly what the Torah is telling us now. Am Israel did a terrible sin. After seeing God, getting the Torah from God himself, building a golden calf, worshipping a golden calf, or even agreeing to this idea, this is terrible. They realize what they did, and they're ashamed, and they sad, and they depressed. the head is down. So God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, first of all, raise up the heads of Am Yisrael. Raise up their heads, because otherwise you're finished. By the way, in life it's the same thing. Also in business. When you're in business and you do a mistake, or chas v'shalom, sometimes people just lose the business. So the first action could be, okay, I lost the business, that's it, I finished my life, I've got nothing to do, but we are Jews, we believe in God. And by the way, there are people that believe in gold, in money, which we're talking, in a minute we'll talk about the gold. And I can only give you a very interesting sample. We had just now the President of the United States, Donald Trump, which is a business person who, from what I know, I think 3 or 4 times went bankrupt, lost the business. And look where he is today. He even became the president of the USA. In other words, sometimes falling is only a reason to raise up even higher, to get up and get to a higher level. For example, when you want to jump high, what do? The first thing? You bend down. In other words, God is telling us a secret for living good life. First of all, never give up. And never get into depression, especially if somebody understands and realizes what this is all about. What is this world all about? And understand that God, our Father in heaven, loves us so much that whatever we did, He's going to forgive us if we do the right thing, because He loves us. And parents love their children. Even if the children are naughty and they don't do naughty things, still the parents love, and they just wait for the child to do a good thing and to ask for forgiveness and come back to it. They just wait for it, and they open their arms to it. And this is with human beings. God, love and God is something that goes together. It's something that you cannot even describe how God loves us. He created us. And this is what we have to put in our head. Doesn't matter what you did. What God wants you. Here, listen to this. Do you understand what this means? That you trust somebody, he gives you everything, and you betray him 2 minutes later. This is terrible. Just now, God reveals himself to us, gives us the Torah, and 2 minutes later, we worship a golden calf? Wow! What is God doing? Did God stop the manna from going down to feed us? Did he stop the water? No. Unbelievable. With all what we did, he still gives us the bread from heaven, the manna. Unbelievable. So if this is God, and we realize how much he loves us, so there is no reason whatever to take your head down. You always have to be with your head up and to understand what you are. You've got powers, and yes, you are a human being, and human beings do mistakes. And if you did mistakes, so what? Fix it. Do the good in the eyes of God. And a lot of times, as I told you before, and I see it also in my business, sometimes when you go down, you see all the mistakes you did, and you fix them, and then when you raise up again, you do it much better. So the first thing that God is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, Ki tisa et rosh b'nei Israel. Raise up their heads. Because only this way they can go on with life and do the good in the eyes of God. Because if you're depressed, you do nothing. You're worthless. So first of all, get out of your depression. And we don't need a psychologist for this. We need a Torah. We need to understand that God loves us. And it doesn't matter what we did. We always have the way back to God. And here he gives us the way back. One of the interesting points when we're talking about doing things, as we said, lachashov machashavot la'asot, to think and to do. With what? Bezahav u'bakesef b'nechoshet. Why did the Torah start with the gold, with the silver and the copper? Because when you say gold, you know, in America, they also are great worshippers, you know, of what? Of money. And if you want to understand how great worshippers they are.
Sorry, so, there's somebody with the microphone open.
1 minute, I'll see who is open and I mute him. Now, okay? Okay. So we in America see a new idol. It's not new. Everybody knows this idol. You know what kind of idol this is? The idol of gold, the idol of money. What do they have on the dollar? What's written there? In God we trust. You take the dollar bill, what's written on it? In God we trust. Who is their God? The dollar. And we see it there. We see that in a lot of places in the States, especially in the centers, in the New York or other places, if you haven't got money, you are nothing. There are, of course, other places far away from the center, and there it's different. But the main thing of America is money. You've got money, you're worth something. You haven't got money, in Am Israel, you have Torah, that's what means. So why is the Torah talking with us about gold? Because you have to understand, gold is not something terrible. It's not something disgraceful. On the contrary, gold is beautiful. Gold is good. And money is unbelievable. But you have to understand that your goal is not the money. The goal is worshiping God, and the money is a tool to worship God. It's the means to go and get to the right destination. So the Torah is telling us, think thoughts and do the right thing with the gold, with the silver, and with the copper. Because we are talking about what? Building a Mishkan, building a shrine, building a tabernacle, building a mikdash, a temple. And who has to build the temple? We said already. We have to build the temple inside us, because the temple today, unfortunately, was destroyed. We haven't got a temple today. And if we already want to talk about the temple, talk about the tabernacle. Tabernacle was in the desert, and never again. We didn't even hear about it again. And it's very interesting. In the last parsha, the Haftorah is written like this: Ata ben Adam, agedet bet Israel, you human being. This is talking about the prophet Yechezkel. Talk to the house of Israel. Et abayit. You talk to them about the house. What house? The temple. V'ikalmu, and they will be ashamed for the sin they did. V'ikalmu ma'avonotem. Umadedu התוכנית, that you should measure the plan. Which plan? The plan of the building of the temple. And they should be ashamed when they see all the plans with all the entrance and the out and the. What does it mean? When I see a plan, I will be ashamed. Why should I be ashamed? What's the point? The point is, when you look at the plan, if you look and learn the details of the Mishkan, the temple, and all the things involved, and you understand that this is not just a story about the building, this is a story about building yourself as a human being. As we saw together for a few times, right? How the menorah was built, how the table was built, how the covenant, the Mishkan Aidut, how the ark was built. All those things are the details are teaching us how we should build ourselves. And here also the same thing. So the Torah is telling us, look, think, and do the right thing in the eyes of God, with the gold, with the silver, with the copper, with everything you've got, with all your possession. Do the right thing. What is doing the right thing? Doing the right thing is using it wisely, doing the good in the eyes of God. Spend your money on good things. Do things that are going to be good for you and for your neighbor, good for you or for the society, because this is worshiping God. Because loving God is loving the human being. Loving God is loving the nature. Loving God is loving the whole creation, because God, He is the one who created. And when we think we have to do things right, what does it mean to do things right? Before any action, the Torah tells us, as we see it, it's goes both ways. Lachashov machshavot la'asot. Think before you do, but don't only think, just do also. A few years ago, I had a week that all the people that got my stuff, like the chairs we send in boxes or other things that are all packed in nice boxes, and people complaining about cuts, broken things. We couldn't understand what happened. How is it possible? Everything is packed in the best way. And we never ever complaints on this. I go one day into the warehouse, and what do I see? I see one of the workers with a knife cutting into a box in order to see what's inside. And I don't have to tell you what happens when you cut with a sharp knife a box that inside is a chair with a cushion, for example. You just cut the cushion. I couldn't believe my eyes. I said, what are you doing? He says, I want to know what's in the box. He said, it's written on the box what it is. Maybe doesn't know how to read English because it was English, and there is a description, there is even sometimes a picture, but he wanted to know the color. And then I realized that this guy, he damaged all the stuff that he sent to people because he was cutting in order to see what's in the box. And we all know something happened to us when we get a delivery, something is in a box, and we want to quickly open it, so we take a knife and then shit. And what happens then? If we're not careful, we damage the goods inside. In other words, you have to think before you act. It's like once I had this hammock to build, and in the garden, our showroom. And you know, I'm doing it for many years to assemble a hammock for the garden. It's no problem. I just opened the box, put all the parts, took the screws, and didn't even look at the plan. And just started doing it. It was going very well, by the way, very well. I built the whole thing, and then I got to the last point, and I had to put a screw in the place, and the screw is too short. What do I do now? I look at the plan, and I realized that there were long screws and short screws. I knew it. And what I did by mistake, I put a long screw in a place where a short screw should be. The long screw got also in because it wasn't so long, but it was long enough to be put in the place that I need now to put it in. In other words, I put a long one in a place of a short one, and I was left with a short one. And here now at the end of the assembling, I needed the long one, which I put in the beginning in a different place. So I had to reassemble the whole thing. Sometimes it's impossible to do. So before you do something, think about it. Like the guy who was cutting my stuff in the warehouse. After you cut it, it's nothing to do. Finished it. So in life, the Torah is telling us, especially when we're talking about building a mishkan, building a shrine for God, building ourselves to be mensch, we have to think how to do it in the right way. But it's not enough thinking, we have also to do. And when we do it with thinking, and then you know what to do with anything that you've got in life. And this is a very important thing. And this leads us to another interesting point, very interesting point. We all know that in the world, it's like this dream that everybody should be equal. And unfortunately, what does it mean equal? So we have the communists. They decided that they want an equal society, that everybody is the same. And they called everybody friend, comrades. But we all know that they were comrades that were very rich and very high up there in the government, and they were the poor comrades. And these things that were happening, terrible thing. They were talking about the Tsar, what he did. They did worse. People were just disappearing in the middle of the night. People walk on the street, and then the KGB just took them from the street and never be seen again, or went to Siberia or to other places. And this is equal. Yes, this is equal. So is there any way that everybody will be the same as the other? No. So why did God do it this way? It's not fair. We should all be the same. And this is exactly the point. We should all be the same in the eyes of God. What does it mean? It means that everybody's got a job. And if he does his job, he is equal to anybody else. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu, the highest level of Am Yisrael, the highest prophet, he did what he had to do. And if this cleaner in the street does what he have to do. You know, this is the famous story I told you once before. You know, the Rav Moshe Feinstein, he was the Dolador of the United States. Dolador for everybody, whatever. And there is a story, a famous story. There was this wrestler, an old guy. He was wrestling all his life. He was all like a one eye looked here, whatever. He never learned anything. Didn't know how to read and write. And when he got older, his son did tshuva. And he was started learning Gemara and everything. And every evening, the father is looking at his child and he's learning and he's enjoying it. So one day he came to his son and told him, "My dear son, I want to learn also Gemara." So the son said, "Father, I'm sorry, it's not nice to say, but you know, you don't know how to read and write. How do you want me to teach you?" He says, "No, you teach me how to read and write, and we do it together slowly." So that's what I did. 1 year, he managed to finish 1 page of the Gemara. And he saw that his son, every once in a while, he does a shiur. When you finish a whole series of learning, you do a shiur, you do a party, and a special thing. So after finishing this page, he comes to his son and says, "My dear son, I want to do a shiur." The son, "Our father, with all due respect, you know, you don't do a shiur on 1 page. At least let's do 1 chapter. Now 1 page, do a shiur. It's possible." He says, "I want to do a shiur, a big shiur, on 1 page. You go and ask the Rebbe." So he went to Moshe Feinstein and came to him. Ashamed even to ask the question. His father learned 1 page and wants to do a shiur. And he told Rav Moshe Feinstein the story. You know what Rav Moshe Feinstein said? "You do a shiur, and I'm coming to the shiur." Unbelievable. What a shiur this was. Everybody came. All the most important people in the town came. Rav Moshe Feinstein comes to the shiur. Who is not going to come? The shiur, he talked about how important it is learning, etc. The next day, this guy died. He died. And you know who went to the Levaya? Reb Moshe Feinstein heard the Levaya. He went to the Levaya and let everybody know about it. And you all know what happened there. This Levaya was one of the greatest, biggest Levayas in the States. Because when people heard that Dolador, Reb Moshe Feinstein goes to the Levaya, everybody went. Wow, this must be a great tzaddik. If the Reb Moshe Feinstein goes to the Levaya, must be a great tzaddik. So this wrestler that hardly knew how to read and write had this great Levaya with all the great people, all the big scholars of the States working with him. And on the grave, he talked with Moshe Feinstein and he said, "Yesh koneh olamo b'sha'a achat." There is one that can buy his world in 1 hour. You do tshuva, you buy a world. That's well. V'yesh koneh olamo b'daf echad. And there is one that can buy his whole world, olam haba, with 1 page. And that's a big lesson. This guy, who knows where he is in heaven? It could well be that he's in a higher place. I'm just saying, you know, for you to understand, than Moshe Feinstein. Because he gave everything he had in order to learn with his old problem today, with no knowledge. He gave everything he had in order to learn this 1 page. And this is a big lesson. And how do we see it in our parsha? Our parsha said, 1 minute. One minute, let me find it. Sorry, who is? Okay. Where is it? 1 minute. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong parsha. ראה קראתי בשם בצלאל בן אורי בן חור למטה יהודה. See, I'm calling Bezalel ben Uri. Who do we think built the Mishkan? We all know Bezalel. Bezalel is the one. He's the architect of the Mishkan. It's right, but he's not alone. ראה קראתי בשם בצלאל בן אורי בן חור למטה יהודה. I called him and I will fill him up with the spirit of God. ואמלא אותו רוח אלוקים, wisdom, תבונה, cleverness, דעת, knowledge, בכל מלאכה, in everything that he does. לחשוב מחשבות, to think thoughts, and to do with the gold, with the silver and the copper, etc., etc. And then, ואני, הנה נתתי איתו את האוליאב בן אחיסמך למטה דן. With him, I put together האוליאב בן אחיסמך from the tribe of Dan. And then, ובלב כל חכם, and in each heart of wisdom, those who have the wisdom of the heart, I'll give the wisdom, and they will do everything I said. So the first question is, why only mention those two names and not mentioning other names? And why mentioning those special names when we see that one is from one tribe and the other one is from another tribe? But if you look at it, very interesting. We all think about Bezalel when we talk about the Mishkan. And we forget, which is wrong, definitely wrong. We forget about our Lihav and definitely forget about all the others. So the Torah tells us, look at it. From one side, we have the best tribe, the tribe of the kings, Shevet Yehuda, the tribe of Mashiach ben David. This is the highest level of society. On the other side, we have Shevet Dan. Ha'oliab is from Shevet Dan. Shevet Dan is the lowest level of the tribes. He was the last one that was going. So the Torah shows you the two sides of the picture and tells you, we take this one and we put him together with this one to tell you that everybody is equal in the eyes of God. And everybody can do unbelievable things. And that's then telling you, if you think that's only those two, no. Everybody in Am Yisrael who's got the wisdom of the heart to do what is good in the eyes of God, as we said, to think thoughts, good thoughts, and do, not only thinking, and do the right things in the eyes of God with whatever he gets, and not only thinking, but doing, he can get to the same level of everybody else. In other words, the equalness of the Torah is when you do and when you use your potential, then everybody is equal. So I can bless us all that each one of us will do his share in building this unbelievable Mishkan of Am Yisrael together, each one of us with his own abilities. To think the right thoughts, and not only thinking, but doing, to do the right things in the eyes of God, with everything we've got, with oral talents, with the possession, with anything we've got, to build this beautiful Mishkan for Am Yisrael, for us together, everybody. And this will bring us, Bezrat Hashem, Lagula Shlema B'mera B'yameinu. Amen. All the best to everybody.